Welcome to Smarter, Richer, Braver, the podcast that's especially curated for a generation of young people who want to step up, stand out, and live life on their own terms. A generation who aim to do better, not just for themselves, but for humanity as a whole. A generation who aim to be smarter, richer, and braver, because that's exactly what the world today needs. I'm your host, Marilyn Pinto, author and founder at KFI Global, and I'd like to warmly welcome all you Gen Zers. A special shout out to all our KFI Global students listening in. Please know that this podcast was made with you in mind, and I promise it's going to be worth your attention.
This podcast is strictly for those 25 years and younger. If you are older than that, please listen at your own risk. Common side effects include regret and anger for not having heard this earlier in your life.
Today's episode is one you can't afford to miss, not if you want to ride the wave of this technology. It's the biggest thing since the internet was invented. It's what everyone's talking about and worrying about. It's rumored to displace or make many jobs redundant, and it's definitely going to impact your career, no matter what that career is. Learning how it works and how to work with it is a skill that can't be overemphasized. We're talking about AI, and joining us on this episode is Ronsley Vaz, a computer scientist, entrepreneur, speaker, author, software engineer, and podcaster. He's created podcasts for some of the most famous people on the planet, and he's also one of the most knowledgeable people to talk about AI and its impact on our lives. You're going to learn a lot from listening to this, and I know that his insights and advice will help you live a life that's smarter, richer, and braver. Ronsley, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
That's such a nice introduction. Thanks, Marilyn. This is cool. I'm excited to talk to the kids.
Ronsley, what do you think are some of the most common misconceptions around AI that youngsters tend to have?
Well, it's hard for me to say what exactly misconceptions they have because I haven't spoken necessarily to kids or youngsters that have misconceptions, but I know adults have a lot of misconceptions. So I feel like maybe we can start there and you can direct me as to whether these are things that you see because you do deal with youngsters a lot. One of the things that adults have, misconceptions that adults have is they feel like artificial intelligence is a fad or it is just something that might pass by, or most importantly, they feel like artificial intelligence is ChatGPT. But it's way, way more than that. The other one is that artificial intelligence is the machines. It won't be able to do the things that we can do. And from the last year, we know for a fact that the things that we thought would be the last to go or the first to go, none of those things are true. Artificial intelligence is here to stay. It's easily going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. And I feel like it's just the combination of things that happened in the industrial age where industry came and machines became part of our daily lives. You would not wash your clothes by hand anymore. And now we have the intelligence age, which is commoditizing intelligence.
Could you break down what exactly artificial intelligence is for our listeners?
Yeah, it's very simple. Artificial intelligence is giving machines a way to think and learn for themselves. Artificial intelligence is different because it's got a brain. It's very similar to us in the sense that it is a living thing because it learns from the data that it's been given, from the interactions that it's having. The only difference between artificial intelligent machines and us is that, or one of the main differences is that it is a silicon-based life form that requires data and power to live.
Could you talk about how artificial intelligence is currently being used in our everyday lives?
Yeah, I mean, it has been used for a while. We look at patterns and we try to find pathways that those patterns represent, and then we make sense of those patterns that we notice. It's no different. Now, when we talk about ChatGPT, or when let's break GPT down, because all text models are generative pre-trained transformers. So that's why sometimes we look at the output and go, well, that's not quite right. But it's based on the data that's been given, and the data that it's been used it's scraped the whole web as a starting point, and it is just predicting the next word. You're just writing whatever's coming out. That is what GPT is. It's just pre-trained on information, and you ask it a question based on that. It is just producing based on its data that it has.
Can you maybe just get into a little more detail about why do you think it's important for young people to learn all this and understand how AI works?
Well, because intelligence is being commoditized, primarily because when you think about a lot of parents today that are making their children be the top of their class and study to get the first rank, or be the best student in the class, now you can get that for $20 a month. So when you're trying to apply it to yourself, that's what we need to give to get the best results, is give it context, because it is extremely smart. So a lot has changed. A lot is changing. When you think about when I went through school, for example, I did engineering and mathematics, and I wasn't allowed a calculator for my exams. That is a thing of the past right now. That we can't even imagine that would happen today. And that's what's happening in schools right now. They're sort of saying, no, don't use AI. But that's not going to be the case for long, because it's literally one of the worst things that we can potentially do is have such a powerful technology and not make it available to everyone.
Many schools today are restricting the use of AI, and I really wanted to hear your take on it. And yeah, I'd really like to know what do you think about this?
I think that's obviously coming from fear. When I started talking and I explained what AI was, you said it's very scary. And so if we're continuously being afraid of this thing that we know is going to be smarter than us, it's going to turn out, we've seen how it's turned out in kids like that. Let's not be the intelligent beings that fear intelligence. That's probably the last thing we want to do. That shows how unintelligent we are, because if we were really intelligent, we wouldn't fear intelligence.
So, from your perspective, what role do you think education should play in preparing young people to work with or alongside AI?
Well, I think if we just break intelligence down, there's human intelligence, which is got its limitations in the sense that we can only learn so much. We get tired, we have to sleep, but we can augment our human intelligence with artificial intelligence, and it can make those connections without us having to use our cognition. And then we align it with divine intelligence and whatever that means for you. And for me, divine intelligence means doing the right thing and trying to solve meaningful problems and making sure that, intelligence is easily accessible and transparent and available to everyone, and not only tech people. So that's the way that we can start to think about intelligence, in a way that really helps us as human beings. And the way forward, I believe, is for us to be more human being as opposed to more human doing. Because see, for the last all these years, we've been delegating what we think about people based on what they do. So we need to step back and be more human and work on the human traits, which is collaboration, which is humility, which is compassion. And people are not going to like that, because all this while we've spent time being, trying to do what will impress people so that we get a standing in society. And I believe that's going to change.
This podcast isn't meant to entertain you. It's meant to help you do life better by showing you how to think about and navigate important issues that aren't usually talked about to youngsters. But we believe that you need to hear this because it has the potential to change your life and the lives of other young people like you. So please share this episode with someone you care about, and if you haven't already, please hit the follow button. It helps us get these meaningful insights and messages in front of more youngsters.
What do you think are the three most important concepts in AI that youngsters today should know? And could you talk us through them?
One of the most important concepts in artificial intelligence is machine learning, where the machine learns from interaction from the world. And when we stop to think about it, either it learns from the data it's been given or from the interaction it's having with humans or the interaction it's having with the world. Now, the second concept on that is the fact that now artificial intelligence has got in different senses. So you can give it an image and say, what do you see in this image? Or count the number of Coke cans in this picture that I took from the supermarket. Or here is a template of a framework that I've used to pitch before. You know enough about me, fill out this whole template. So it'll use its vision, it can see that, and then use its intelligence and its learning on top of that. So the first one is machine learning. The second one is GPT vision. But like that, I think it's neural networks, probably the third one that I think that is most important, which is the connection of all our senses. So those are probably three concepts that are really important to understand because computers are built based on us. It has long-term memory and short-term memory, just like us. The only difference is we forget and it doesn't. So it is extremely smart, and we've built something that is extremely useful because it has been solving a lot of problems for us. I know lots of people, lots of young people especially, feel very strongly about climate change. They feel very strongly about ending hunger and obesity. We have hunger and obesity on the same planet. That's a bit weird, right? It's a bit weird that there are people starving and there are people wasting so much of food on the same planet. Like that, there's so much a dichotomy. And if we start to think, especially young people, because you're the future, you can see things that we can't see because we are trained to see the world in a very black and white way, or we've been trained to see the world in the way that we've been taught in school.
Yeah, we have our eyes wide shut.
We have our eyes wide shut 100%. So I feel like now we have the opportunity to challenge these preconceived notions that we've just held sometimes for no reason, not even knowing why we're holding them. And we can change that.
Prompt engineering is a phrase that's been bandied about a lot these days. What is it?
It's very simple. It is talking to the computer in the way that it understands what you're trying to communicate to it. Prompt engineering is the language of the computers. So it's the combination of humans being able to speak in a way that the computers understand exactly what we're after. Now, that is the biggest gap right now, because in general, we are not able to communicate our ideas in a way that another person understands. They understand exactly what you want from them, and they deliver it in a way that, you don't have to spend your time and your cognitive load to accomplish. But a lot of the times they don't do it the way we want them to do it, primarily because we've not communicated it in a way that they understand. We assume that they know exactly what's in our brain, and they do not. So prompt engineering is about communicating that clearly to the computer so it understands the context of what we're trying to achieve.
So is it like giving someone a recipe to do something, like a step by step?
100%.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great analogy. It's like giving a recipe and helping the computer say, oh, so these are the ingredients I need. This is the process of how to take
Context.
the ingredient. Yes. And this is what you're after. This is the output you're after. So I have a framework, which I'm very happy to share with your audience. It's a 7-step creator prompt framework. It's how to prompt the computer in these 7 steps. It's just a worksheet so that when you're writing your prompt, you can write the prompt in a way that the machine will understand. The first is character. So creator breaks down into CREATOR. It's an acronym for the 7 steps. The first one is character. So what do you want the computer to act like? What is the person or entity that you expect it to act like? The second is, what's the result and the ultimate goal of this prompt? The third is essentials. Like, what is the essential things that you need to give the computer for it to get the result that you're after. Then it's approach, which is what do you want to do with these essential ingredients that you've given it? What is the approach that you want to take? What are the specific steps or processes that if it was a person, you would say, please do it in this manner? Then it's tailoring. So you kind of make it very concise and you give it additional context or information that will help the computer understand, okay, this is essential information. This is additional context that will make it more specific to my particular use case that I'm doing right now. The sixth is output. How do you want it to give you the output? What does it look like? Do you want it in a table form? Do you want a paragraph? Do you want it in bullet points? How do you want the result of this to look like? And finally, most importantly, who is the recipient of the prompt output? Like, who is going to look at this? Who is it for?
So who is this for?
Correct. So if you take those elements, you will create a prompt that actually the computer understands with enough context. And then you can amplify it, pun intended, in a way that is very specific. Those kind of things really help. And it's like talking to a human being. So the more context you give it, the better it's going to respond.
Could you give our listeners a cheat sheet or tips on the best AI resources for various tasks?
Well, I'll definitely give you the framework for the prompt engineering framework so that it's easier to understand and you can fill it out yourself as a cheat sheet. But I think just talking to ChatGPT and refining what you're after with the responses you're getting is probably the most important thing. So you understand exactly what intelligence looks like. Don't expect the first response to be the be all and end all. That's what most people think.
So you have to make it a point of reworking the result. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. In computer science, it's called recursion. It is a recursive nature of making iterations with the computer. So you recursively take the output it gives you and use it as the input for the next thing you're asking for it. So you keep refining it until you get to a point. And that happens with human beings as well. Like we can't expect someone who's just joined our company to know exactly how we do things. They're not going to know. There is inside ChatGPT in the settings section, there's something called custom instructions. Custom instructions is very powerful, and I would encourage everyone to try it and use it. Use different personas. So what I mean by that is if you're trying to write an essay as an example, you'd want it to be a certain type of person that writes that essay. So give it that instruction. So it's being specific as to what it's trying to achieve. And then there are different other tools that do amazing things. Like if you are an editor and you create content, then there's Descript is something that I would highly recommend. We can edit using artificial intelligence. You can remove ums and ahs. You can search for certain words and remove. For example, there's certain types of words that I use a lot. So my team can go through my transcript and remove all the likes. I mean, sometimes like does belong in a sentence, so that's not a good idea. But in general, it's using artificial intelligence to edit, and it is very powerful actually. So it also can do things like make any bad sounding video sound good using artificial intelligence. And there's transcripts that can be done using artificial intelligence. There's so many interesting things that you can do, especially now with creating your own GPTs, which is your own version or your own trained, very specific persona. So for example, I'm writing my new book, my second book, on an ethical framework on adopting artificial intelligence to hit your business goals. And I've trained a GPT on my manuscript or whatever is written of the manuscript so far. So I can have a conversation with this manuscript. So these are different things that I feel like right now are very powerful. And I think they're going to get more and more powerful for sure.
How do you foresee AI influencing the job market for young individuals? What kind of skills do you think they should prioritize for their career success? Anything in particular that comes to mind?
Critical thinking, being able to
Okay.
critically think, being able to disagree, being able to be in a conversation where someone else doesn't agree with your viewpoint, being able to listen, being able to understand different perspectives, being open, being collaborative, being of use and value, trying to solve meaningful problems. I believe that is easily the things that we should focus on. Unfortunately, it's not becoming an engineer, it's not becoming someone that's a prompt engineer, it's another job. Those are going to be taken because it's already been taken. Now, there are already GPTs, like how I created a GPT for my book. There's already GPTs that can help you do better prompts. So you can put that in and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. What is a better prompt? And it'll write the better prompt for you. I mean, we're training young people how to be a really good engineer, but not necessarily on how to be a good person. When we focus so much of our energy, both teachers, parents,
Everyone, yeah.
they focus on the grade, on the certificate, so that parents can tell other parents, oh, look at my kid, see how smart they are. But that's not going to be a thing because you can be smart for less than $20 a month right now.
I like that metaphor because technology is going to be so fast and so fast changing that if we don't have that higher consciousness, it's like giving a ticking bomb in the hands of a youngster nowadays. And that's really dangerous.
You're way more precise than I have been all this time, because that is probably the single most important thing, is raising our consciousness of the planet. Because right now, whenever you talk about artificial intelligence, everyone's operating from fear. And we've got to raise that consciousness from fear to courage and then to love, because only humans can do that. The machines don't know how to raise the consciousness yet. So we've got to learn how to do it so that we can then ultimately teach the machines, so that the machines don't operate from fear and don't ultimately wipe us out. Because if it does wipe us out, we're not going to know where it's going to come from, because it's way more intelligent than we are. So we can't prepare for it. It's not a case that exists. So we've got to be smart about this. And unfortunately, for us as human beings who hate change, this is probably
It's
going to be
hard.
the biggest change that we'll have to go through.
Let's segue into something else here. Are there any emerging trends in AI that young people should be aware of?
Well, how quickly that things are changing, how quickly we can do things now that we couldn't do a year ago, 6 months ago. We can do precision surgery right now. Okay, we've known for a fact that drivers are going to be a thing of the past. For a long time, we've known that, at least for not, if not 10 years, the last 5 years for sure. We know that autonomous vehicles are here. They're going to replace drivers. We don't have to learn to drive anymore. Just like we don't have to learn, don't have to learn how to plow the field to get our food. We don't know how that's done. Just like that, driving is going to become obsolete. So whoever makes their money driving needs to look at what the next
Yes.
thing is for them, because that's going to be something. So look at the trends, look at what is already happening, look at how we're solving some problems that are very important to solve. Artificial intelligence does not have that. And there are way too many case studies right now and use cases of how AI has actually stopped doctors from operating on things that they didn't have to operate on, because they thought there was one in particular, they were going to operate someone on their spine, and because they were getting pain in that area. And they put it through artificial intelligence, and AI went, it's just an appendix that's inflamed. Those are big, big things that happen all the time. So these are trends that I think that we should all look at and see how it's changing, and pay attention.
Ronsley, before we let you go, what message do you have for our listeners?
I think artificial intelligence obviously is going to be the biggest conversation we have. It's going to change how we as humans operate. And we can be better humans. We can live a better life. We can have especially all of us right now that have access to computers and mobile phones and is living in a safe house where we can change the temperature of the room we sit in. We, in particular, the privileged ones, I'd love for us to step back and be more compassionate, understand, and with more empathy, look at other people and really see the common amongst us all. We're all trying to be happy. We're all trying our best to live our lives and see that rather than why each one of us are different. Look at the differences in a way that is more perspective based and not dismissive based. Look at it as information and look at it as a way to unite because we'll need that at some point.
That is a very deep and very wonderful message. Ronsley, thank you so much for doing this. And you've given us gold. I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me the questions. A lot of the things I said today, I've heard for the first time. It's sort of come from somewhere. So it's not necessarily all mine, but thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. I want to help you use what you learned here. And the best way to do that is to get a podcast buddy. That's someone who also listens to this podcast. Then talk to your podcast buddy about the one takeaway from this episode that resonated with you the most. That's it. That's all you have to do. Remember that much of what is talked about on this podcast is stuff that's not typically talked about to young people. And it should be. It's stuff that you need to know so that you can lead a life that's, you guessed it, smarter, richer, and braver. This is your host, Marilyn Pinto, signing off until next time.
If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to broach in our upcoming episodes, please email us at smarterricherbraver@gmail.com. And if you'd like to sign up for one of our award-winning programs, go to kfi.global and check out our upcoming schedule.